Greetings, my snowed-in internet lovers. Have you been watching any good series lately? Well, I have the Harmonic Series. It's by the same director who decided that night should lead into day, summer into fall, baby into adult. That's right, nature themselves decided what makes a dominant lead to the tonic, what harmonies sound good in music. It's something that existed before there were ever ears to appreciate it, and it's the foundation of all chords and scales. So when a note is sounded on a string or a column of air, an animal hide, a bell, the shock wave that moves across the whole length of it is called the fundamental. And that shock wave is moving at a certain speed per second. So one wavelength per second is called a hertz. So say you had 55 hertz. It moves 55 of these wavelengths per second. That would be called an A in music, or A55. The fundamental gives the note its name. But vibrating simultaneously every time you sound that note is infinite multiples of that fundamental. So if you had 55, you'd have harmonics every 55 hertz. So plus 55 into infinity, vibrating with it, and they get quieter and quieter and out of our hearing range, but they're there every time, and you can measure them. And they fit mathematically, obviously if they're multiples, they fit mathematically in with that fundamental, creating pleasant harmonies with it, and so they're called harmonics, and they're really just sine waves that fit mathematically in with it. So imagine this is a string or a column of air, etc. So right here, and so your fundamental is moving the whole length of it, and that's what you hear the loudest, because it's either tuned that way on purpose or by nature. But also vibrating simultaneously at twice that harmonic fundamental is 110 hertz. So 5 times 2 is 110. And anytime you multiply a hertz by 2, you are going to get an octave. So there's an octave always vibrating above that fundamental. But also at 55 times 3, vibrating in thirds across the length of the string or column of air, 3 times as fast, you have 165 if your fundamental is 55. So that would be an E note, 165. And that is a fifth away. That's the fifth, the dominant. And that proves how important the dominant is in relationship to your tonic. It's not arbitrarily decided. It's nature, it's math, it's physics. So vibrating at 4 times as fast along the length of that string, etc., you have another octave, because that's going to be your last octave times 2. Another A, 220. But then, vibrating 5 times as fast across that string is going to be 275, which is a C sharp. And that is a major third in the A major scale. So that is showing you how important thirds are and major scales are, and it's just not something people just decided, oh, that sounds cute, let's make this the roll, and how music works. Nature decided it. And then at 6 times that fundamental, these smaller waves going across every 6th of the string, etc., we have another E, another proof that the dominant is really important at 330 hertz. And then even more interesting, we have vibrating 7 times the fundamental. We have 385, which is a G, which is the flat 7 of a scale. And it's interesting that 7 times the fundamental and the 7 line up. And it's also interesting to just prove how important the flat 7 is, because when you add a flat 7 to a chord, it's going to make you want to go a fourth away, making it a dominant that wants to lead back to its tonic. Even if you're not originally in the key of it, you add a 7 to something and it's like, hey, I want to go to whatever I'd be the dominant of universally. Then we arrive back at our octave, another octave, and it's also divided 8 times, so that's the numbers lining up again, and we're up to A440 now, which is a frequency you may be familiar with because it's what instruments tend to tune to in the orchestra and on a tuner. But what is interesting about A440 and all of these perfectly lined up harmonics is, even though tonics, thirds, fifths, sevenths, none of those were arbitrarily decided to be perfect. They were decided by nature and math. What was arbitrarily decided by humans was the idea of dividing a scale into 7 equal different parts, or these mathematically round numbers, because they actually don't divide that equally. Some of them are closer to each other, and so if you were to really have everything lined up with these perfect numbers, some of the intervals would be a little flat or sharp in relationship to each other. And this is the concept of there being a difference between equal temperament and just temperament. Equal temperament is a tuning system that wants to use these round perfect numbers going up into infinity, and just temperament is noticing more how these intervals actually fit into each other. And you can hear it with your ears. When something is dissonant over all of the notes and harmonics, you can hear these beats that are created because the sine waves are not lining up. And so within equal temperament, you can use a computer or something to tune it, but you kind of need to use your ear and hear those beats go away to tune something to just temperament. And a lot of instruments are tuned to just temperament, like a piano. That's why it's so important for a good piano tuner, because they're using their ear. You can't just take a tuner and tune every key. Same with violins and cellos. You have to tune them to themselves and make sure those little dissonant beats go away. You can't just use a tuner, because then it won't be in tune with itself if you tuned everything mathematically to this A440 system. And there's even conspiracy theories, because it's kind of a modern thing to use equal temperament, and there's theories that they wanted to take us away from nature and the original vibrations of the earth and control society. Hitler and Wagner were in it together, and if you used just temperament to, I guess, the original sound or something, you would actually have an A432. It wouldn't be 440. It would be a little flatter than that. And there's theories that that is the actual vibration of the whole earth and love and beauty and all kinds of things. So that's very interesting stuff, and next time we'll get into some of these vibrations and what they are in charge of, what they can heal. There's even been scientific studies showing what they can heal. Like I wrote down on here some of them. A55 hertz was just our example to show you the harmonic series, but it's also said that if you play an A55, it's going to stimulate the kundalini energies through your chakras. Or if you play a 110, that's the human frequency, and it's what a lot of Buddhists chant their mantras at, and it stimulates the right brain. The G30 385, or it's just temperament correlative, would bring about and attract and create the divine feminine energy. So next time we'll get into some of that. But something else that's interesting about the Harmonic Series is each instrument will create it in their notes, but some will strengthen or weaken certain harmonics, which gives its own unique timbre. So maybe a trumpet would, by just the structure of its own trumpetness, would have a stronger third harmonic that you hear a little louder, versus maybe a guitar would strengthen its fourth harmonic more and less its third. And so that's why, without looking at an instrument, we can tell, even if it was the same note played the same length, we can tell which instrument played each. And that's also when they're creating different instrument sounds in a synthesizer. They've studied which instruments have stronger harmonics in different parts, and so they'll just program that into their computer and make something sound a little more like a trumpet or like a violin, a voice, etc. And so what I think for now is the most interesting thing about this is just the fact I began with of nature creating this, and music isn't just something that was decided upon. It's just math and physics and nature that created it, and that's why we study it and follow it that way. It's the Harmonic Series. So be sure to start binging on that. It's really interesting.